What happens when the one thing you've been told defines your worth becomes the very thing that destroys you? For Arya Winters, life as an Omega in the Silvercrest pack meant invisibility. She was the daughter of mid-ranking wolves who'd taught her to keep her head down, to serve without complaint, to dream small. Her wolf was quiet, too quiet, some said, barely a whisper in her mind when other wolves could feel their beasts prowling beneath their skin. She worked in the pack kitchens, kept the Alpha's estate spotless, and told herself that being useful was enough, that one day the moon goddess might smile on her and grant her a mate who would see past her rank. But when Alpha Cain Blackwood stood before the entire pack during the Harvest Moon ceremony and rejected her as his fated mate, severing their bond with a blade of pure silver pressed to his own chest while guards held her in place, everything changed. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. Not the pack, not the 10 ancient wolves who'd been waiting in the mountains for 1,000 years, and certainly not the Alpha King himself, who'd been watching from the shadows, waiting for the precise moment when destiny would shatter and remake itself. Because sometimes, breaking is the only way to become whole. The scent of lavender and morning dew had always clung to Arya, soft and unassuming, easily overlooked in a pack where dominance smelled like forest fires and steel. She'd noticed it herself, how wolves would walk past her without a second glance, how even her own parents seemed to forget she was in the room. At 22, she'd long since accepted that this was simply who she was meant to be. The Harvest Moon ceremony changed everything. It was supposed to be a celebration. The pack had gathered in the great clearing at the heart of their territory, where ancient oak trees formed a natural cathedral, and the full moon painted everything in silver light. Every wolf over 18 was required. To attend, unmated wolves stood in careful rows, hoping tonight would be the night they'd feel that electric pull, that undeniable certainty of recognition. Arya had been serving wine when it happened. The bond snapped into place with such force that she dropped the tray. Crystal shattered across stone. Every wolf in the clearing turned to stare as she gasped, her hand flying to her chest where a warmth was spreading like wildfire. Her wolf, her silent, dormant wolf, suddenly surged to the surface with a keening cry. Mate? Her eyes found him instantly. Alpha Cain Blackwood stood on the raised dais, surrounded by his inner circle. He was everything an alpha should be, tall and broad-shouldered with dark hair and eyes like storm clouds. The scent of forest, embers, and steel rolled off him in waves, sharp with ozone and power. He was only 25, but he'd taken control of Silvercrest 3 years ago after his father's death, and he ruled with an iron fist. He was staring at her, and the look on his face was pure horror. "No," he said, the word carrying across the suddenly silent clearing. "No, this isn't possible." Arya's heart hammered against her ribs. Around her, wolves began to whisper. She could smell their shock, their confusion, their barely concealed disgust. An alpha and an omega. Such bonds were rare, but not unheard of. The moon goddess chose as she willed, but Arya could already see the calculation in Cain's eyes, could already feel the cold dread settling in her stomach. "Arya Winters," Cain said, his voice ringing with authority. "Approach." She walked forward on shaking legs. Every step felt like an eternity. The bond between them hummed and pulled, trying to draw them together, but Cain's expression only grew harder. When she reached the base of the dais, she dropped into the traditional bow, head lowered, neck exposed, showing submission. "Look at me," he commanded. She raised her eyes. Up close, she could see the muscle ticking in his. Jaw could smell the anger and something else. Was that fear? Beneath his carefully controlled exterior. "The moon goddess has made an error," Cain announced, pitching his voice to Carrie. "I cannot accept an Omega as my Luna. Silvercrest is the strongest pack in the Northern Territories. We have alliances to maintain, enemies to keep at bay. We need strength. We need power." He gestured to his right, where a stunning she-wolf stood among his circle. Seraphina Cross had hair like spilled wine and eyes of amber gold. Her scent, cinnamon and iron and something darker like old blood, was assertive and strong. She was a beta, daughter of the pack's lead warrior, and everyone knew Cain had been courting her for months. "Seraphina will be my Luna," Cain continued. "She is fit to rule at my side. orchestrated narrative progression through emotional climax and character exile. I'm about 550 words in. I need to continue with the public rejection, the severing of the bond, the physical pain, and Arya being cast out. This is still Act 1, which should be around 500 words total. Let me continue building this scene with the emotional weight it needs. Arya felt like she couldn't breathe. The bond was screaming now, her wolf howling in anguish. "Alpha," she whispered, barely able to form words. "Please, the goddess, brings me a weakling." Kane's voice turned cruel. An Omega who can barely shift, whose wolf is so pathetic I can't even sense her. He leaned forward. "Tell me, Arya, when was the last time you shifted? When was the last time you ran with the pack?" She couldn't answer. Couldn't tell him that she'd never fully shifted, that every time she tried, something stopped her, like there was a wall inside her own mind. Couldn't explain that her wolf felt more like a distant dream than a living presence. "That's what I thought." Kane straightened. "I, Alpha Kane Blackwood of the Silvercrest Pack, reject you, Arya Winters, as my fated mate. I sever this bond in the name of the moon goddess and for the good of my pack." "No," the word tore from her throat. "Please, you can't." But two guards were already moving forward, grabbing her arms. One of them, Marcus, who'd always been kind to her, wouldn't meet her eyes. The other, a wolf named Derek, gripped her hard enough to bruise. Kane descended the dais. In his hand was a ceremonial blade, its silver edge gleaming in the moonlight. Silver, the one metal that could cut through supernatural bonds, that could hurt their kind. "Hold her!" Kane ordered. The guards forced her to her knees. Arya struggled, her wolf thrashing inside her, but she was too weak, too untrained. She'd never learned to fight. No one had ever thought an Omega would need to. Kane pressed the flat of the blade against his own chest, directly over his heart. "I reject this bond," he said again, and drew the blade across his palm. Blood welled up, dark and glistening. He held his bloody hand over her. The first drop hit her forehead. Pain exploded through every nerve. The bond between them, that golden thread that had barely had time to form, began to fray. Arya screamed. It felt like her soul was being torn in half, like every cell in her body was being ripped apart and set on fire. Her wolf's howl became a death wail. Kane showed no mercy. He spoke the formal words of rejection, each syllable driving the blade deeper into the bond. "I cast you out. I deny you. You are nothing to me. You will never be my mate, my Luna, or my pack sister. You are Omega and nothing more." The bond shattered. Arya collapsed, barely conscious. Distantly she heard Serafina laugh, a bright, victorious sound. Heard the pack murmuring, some in shock, most in approval. Heard her own parents in the crowd, silent. "Remove her from pack lands," Kane said, his voice flat and emotionless now that it was done. "She has until dawn to cross our borders. If she's found on Silvercrest territory after sunrise, she will be executed as a rogue." The guards dragged her away. The last thing Arya saw before darkness claimed her was Kane turning back to Serafina, already dismissing her from his mind, already moving on with his life as if she'd never existed at all. They dumped her at the northern border just as the first snow began to fall. Arya lay where they'd dropped her, unable to move, barely able to breathe. The pain of the broken bond was unlike anything she'd ever imagined. It was as if part of her had been amputated without anesthesia, a phantom limb that screamed even though it was gone. Her wolf had retreated so far inside her mind that she couldn't feel her at all anymore. She was alone in a way she'd never been alone before. Slowly, painfully, she forced herself to sit up. The guards had left her with nothing, no supplies, no warm clothes, just the simple dress she'd worn to the ceremony. Snow was falling harder now, and the temperature was dropping fast. This was the mountain pass, the wildlands where no pack claimed territory. Nothing out here but rocks and ice and the occasional rogue wolf, most of whom were exiled criminals, dangerous and unhinged. Behind her, back toward Silvercrest lands, she could still smell her old life. Wood smoke and cooking fires and the dozens of wolves who'd been her pack. She thought about going back, about begging for shelter, about throwing herself on her parents' mercy. But she already knew what would happen. Her mother had turned away when the guards grabbed her. Her father had looked at the ground. They'd raised her to be small, to be invisible, to never challenge authority. They wouldn't defy their alpha for her, not even to save her life. So Arya did the only thing she could. She stood up, wrapped her arms around herself, and started walking north into the storm. Time became meaningless. Minutes or hours passed, she couldn't tell. The snow fell thick and fast, coating everything in white. Her dress was soaked through, her bare feet left bloody, prints in the snow. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore, couldn't feel her toes. The cold was seeping into her bones, making her thoughts slow and heavy. She found the barn by accident, stumbling into it when her legs finally gave out. It was ancient and half-collapsed, probably abandoned decades ago. But it had a roof and walls, and that was more than she'd had before. Arya crawled into the driest corner she could find, buried herself in moldy hay, and tried to stay conscious. But consciousness was slipping away. Her body was shutting down, conserving what little energy remained. The cold was almost peaceful now, numbing everything. The pain of the broken bond faded to a dull ache. This is it, she thought distantly. This is how I die. Alone, cast out, forgotten. Her wolf didn't even stir. For the first time in her life, Arya was truly alone inside her own skin. She closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. She didn't know how long she'd been unconscious when she felt the first stirring of warmth. It came slowly, seeping back into her frozen limbs. At first, she thought she was dreaming, or dead. But then she became aware of breathing, deep rhythmic breathing that wasn't her own. Many breaths, surrounding her. Arya's eyes fluttered open. Wolves, massive wolves, surrounded her in a protective circle, their bodies pressed close, sharing their heat. She could count them as her vision cleared. 1, 2, 3, the number kept growing. 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 enormous wolves, each easily twice the size of any wolf she'd ever seen. Their fur was thick and varied, silver gray, midnight black, russet red, snow white. Steam rose from their bodies in the cold air. And their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, gold and amber and green and blue. They'd kept her alive. They'd protected her from the storm. What? Her voice was a rasp. Why? The largest wolf, a massive creature with fur like aged oak and eyes of glacial blue, shifted. The transformation was seamless, bones and muscle flowing like water, fur receding to reveal bronzed skin. In moments, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was perhaps in his mid-30s, with silver threading through dark hair despite his age. Scars marked his body, old wounds that spoke of countless battles. His face was hard-carved and handsome in a brutal way. And his scent. Arya's barely functioning senses caught it and held on. Aged oak and winter snow and pine and storm. It was grounding, powerful, safe. "You're awake," he said, his voice deep and rough from disuse. "Good. We weren't sure you'd survive the night." "Who?" Arya tried to sit up and failed. "Who are you?" The man studied her with those intense blue eyes. "My name is Cale Stormheart. These are my brothers. My pack." He gestured to the 9 other massive wolves, who watched her with curious, intelligent eyes. "We've been searching for you for a very long time, Arya Winters." Her heart stuttered. "You know my name." "We do." Kyle's expression was unreadable. "We've been waiting for you, watching, following the signs." He reached out slowly as if approaching a wounded animal and brushed snow-dampened hair from her face. "Tell me, do you know what you are? Do you know what they did to you?" Arya shook her head, confused and exhausted, and still so cold despite their warmth. Kyle's jaw tightened. "Then it's time you learned the truth." He looked up at his pack, and Arya saw something pass between them, some silent communication. When he looked back at her, his eyes were fierce. "We've been waiting for you, little matriarch. For 1,000 years we've waited, and now, finally, you're here." "I don't understand," Arya whispered. "You will." Kyle's hand cupped her cheek, and warmth flooded through her at the touch. Not a mate bond. Something different, something older. "Rest now. You're safe. We won't let anything harm you. Not ever again." The 9 other wolves moved closer, forming a tighter circle around her. Their presence was overwhelming but not threatening. Protective, reverent even. As Arya's eyes drifted closed again, this time not from cold but from exhaustion, She heard Kyle murmur something that didn't make sense. The prophecy was right. She came to us broken, just as the moon goddess promised. And now we can finally go home. When Arya woke again, it was to find herself in a cave, a proper cave, dry and warm, with a fire crackling near the entrance. She was wrapped in furs that smelled of the 10 wolves who'd saved her. Her dress had been changed for a simple tunic and leggings, both far too large but clean and warm. She sat up slowly, testing her body. The pain of the broken bond was still there, a constant ache in her chest, but the immediate physical damage from exposure was healed. Her fingers and toes worked properly. No frostbite. She should have lost extremities after a night in that storm, should have been crippled if she'd survived at all. "You heal fast," Kyle's voice came from near the fire. He was in human form, dressed in simple dark clothes, tending something in a pot. "Faster than you should, given your condition." "My condition?" Arya's voice was stronger now. "The binding." Kyle didn't look at her. "It's been with you since infancy. Strong magic, blood magic, the kind that requires immense power and a sacrifice. Someone loved you enough to cripple you, Arya Winters. Someone feared you enough to bury your true nature so deep you'd never find it." Arya's stomach dropped. "I don't understand. What binding? What are you talking about?" Kyle finally turned to face her. "What do you know about the matriarch?" Arya frowned. "Old stories, children's tales. The matriarch was supposed to be the first wolf, the moon goddess's favorite daughter. She could command any wolf, heal any wound, speak with the goddess herself. But she's a myth, a legend to tell cubs before bedtime. Is she?" Kyle moved closer. The other 9 wolves were there too, Arya realized, some in wolf form, others human, all watching her with that same intense focus. "What if I told you the matriarch was real, that she existed 10,000 years ago and united all the wolf packs under one law, one purpose, that she brought an age of peace that lasted a millennium?" Arya shook her head. "Those are just stories. Stories are truth wrapped in time." A new voice, female, rich and warm. One of the wolves had shifted, revealing a woman with silver-white hair and eyes like molten gold. "My name is Lyra. I was there when the first matriarch died. I watched her pass her power to the moon goddess, watched her beg the goddess to keep it safe until it was needed again." Arya stared. "That would make you thousands of years old." "Yes." Lyra smiled, and it was sad and beautiful. "We're all old, little one. The 10 of us were the matriarch's personal guard. When she died, we swore an oath to the moon goddess. We would wait, we would watch, and when the power returned, we would find its vessel and protect her until she came into her full strength." This was insane. Impossible. But Arya couldn't look away from Lyra's ancient eyes, couldn't deny the truth she saw there. "The prophecy was specific," Kale said. He moved to a pack near the cave wall and pulled out a scroll, old parchment, yellowed with age. He unrolled it carefully. "Listen, when the silver moon bleeds red, when the weakest wolf is left for dead, when bonds are broken, power freed, the matriarch will rise from need. She will come in pain and sorrow. She will see a new tomorrow. She will stand when all have fallen. She will answer to our calling. Born of Omega, forged in fire, she will climb from funeral pyre. What was bound will be unbound. What was lost will now be found." The words resonated in Arya's chest. Her wolf, her silent, absent wolf, suddenly stirred. "No," Arya whispered. "No, you're wrong. I'm nobody. I'm just an Omega. I can barely shift. I have no power. I'm bound," Kyle interrupted gently. "Your power was bound when you were an infant. Someone, probably your parents, made a deal with a dark witch. They sealed away your wolf, suppressed your abilities, made you appear weak and unremarkable. They thought they were protecting you. From what? From being found before you were ready, from being killed by those who fear what you represent." Kyle knelt in front of her. "Arya, you're not an Omega. You never were. You're something infinitely more powerful. And last night, when your mate rejected you, when he severed that bond with Silver, he broke the binding." Arya's hand flew to her chest. The pain was still there, but underneath was something else, something vast and coiled and waiting. "I can feel it," she breathed. There's something inside me. I thought it was just the pain, but it's more. Kyle's hand covered hers. Your wolf is waking up. The true one, not the shadow they left you with. And when she fully emerges, his smile was fierce and proud. When she fully emerges, Arya Winters, you will be magnificent. A ripple went through Arya's body. Power, raw, primal power, surging up from somewhere deep inside her. Her wolf wasn't stirring, she was roaring. Finally, a voice said in her mind, not the faint whisper she'd known all her life, but a presence so strong it nearly knocked her over. Finally, I can speak to you. Finally, I am free. My wolf, Arya gasped. She's talking to me. She's really talking. I've always been here, her wolf said, trapped, screaming, watching you suffer while I could do nothing. But the binding is broken now, shattered when that foolish alpha broke our bond. And now, little sister, now we can become what we were always meant to be. What do I do? Arya looked at Chaol desperately. It's so much. I can't control it. I feel like I'm going to explode. You need to shift. Chaol stood, pulling her up with him. Your first true shift. It will be painful. All the power that's been compressed inside you for 22 years is going to come pouring out. But we'll be here. We'll guide you through it. The other 9 wolves had moved to form a circle around her, both those in human form and those who remained wolves. They were chanting something low and rhythmic in a language Arya didn't recognize. Old magic, ancient magic. The power inside her built and built. Her skin felt too tight. Her bones ached. Her wolf was pushing, demanding release. Let go, Chaol commanded softly. Stop fighting. Let her out. Arya closed her eyes, took a breath, and surrendered. The transformation hit like a tidal wave. But it wasn't like the agonizing shifts she'd attempted before. Bones snapping, muscles tearing, the sickening crunch of body parts rearranging. This was fluid. Bones flowed like water, reshaping themselves with purpose. Fur erupted across her skin, not painful, but tingling, electric. She felt herself growing, expanding, becoming. Energy exploded outward from her core. The cave lit up with silver-white light. The chanting of Kyle's pack rose to a crescendo, and Arya finally felt whole. When the light faded, she stood on 4 legs. She was massive, larger than Chaol in his wolf form, larger than any alpha she'd ever seen. Her fur was pure white, with silver patterns that glowed faintly in the firelight. Her paws were the size of dinner plates. And when she looked at her reflection in a pool of water near the cave entrance, she saw her eyes, no longer the mild brown they'd been in human form, but blazing silver white, like the full moon itself. You're beautiful, her wolf whispered. We're beautiful. She is the matriarch, Lyra breathed, and there were tears streaming down her face. After all this time, she's real. She's here. The 9 other wolves, Kyle's guard, all dropped into bows, heads lowered, showing submission to one far, greater than themselves. Arya wanted to tell them to stand, to stop, that she was still just Arya, still the nobody who'd worked in the kitchens. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was a howl. It started low and built, resonating through the cave, through the mountain, through the very earth itself. A howl of rage and grief and triumph. A howl that said, I am here, I survived, and I will never be silent again. The mountain trembled. Small rocks fell from the cave ceiling. And somewhere far to the south, in Silvercrest territory, Arya knew without knowing how she knew that every wolf in her old pack had just felt that howl in their bones. Kyle shifted back to human form, his eyes blazing with pride. Welcome home, my matriarch, he said. Welcome home. The days that followed were a blur of learning and discovery. Kyle and his guard, the Unchained they called themselves, freed from the bonds of time to serve a purpose, taught Arya how to control her new form, how to shift fluidly between human and wolf, how to call on her power without letting it overwhelm her. But it was more than just physical training. Arya discovered abilities she'd never dreamed of. She could sense emotions, not just simple feelings, but complex layers of thought and intention. When one of the Unchained, A quiet wolf named Theron, with russet-red fur, sat too far from the fire and tried to hide his loneliness. Arya felt it like a hook in her chest. She'd gone to him, rested her massive wolf head on his shoulder, and shared her warmth until the ache eased. She could heal. When Lyra accidentally cut herself preparing food, Arya had licked the wound and watched silver light spread from her tongue, sealing the cut as if it had never been. And most terrifying of all, she could command. When two of the younger Unchained, Marcus, not the guard from Silvercrest but a dark-furred wolf who shared the name, and Finn, got into a scuffle over something trivial, Arya had simply said, "Stop," and they'd frozen mid-lunge, compelled by the weight of her will. "I didn't mean to," she'd gasped, releasing them immediately. "I'm sorry, I didn't—" "Don't apologize," Kyle had said. He'd been watching from nearby, supervising her training as he did every day. "That's your gift. The matriarch was the first alpha, Arya. All pack hierarchy flows from her. You can command any wolf anywhere if you choose to use that power." "But that's—" Arya shook her head. "That's too much. I could hurt someone. I could force them to—" "But you won't." Kyle's hand found her shoulder, grounding her. "Because you know what it feels like to be powerless, because you have compassion. That's why the moon goddess chose you for this, Arya. Power without wisdom is tyranny, but you'll use this gift the way it was meant to be used, to protect, to unify, to heal." She wasn't sure she believed him, but as the days turned to weeks, as she grew more comfortable in her own skin, both skins, she began to see what he meant. The Unchained weren't just her guards, they were becoming her family. Lyra taught her to read the old prophecies, to understand the history of their kind. Theron showed her how to hunt, how to move silently through the forest, how to use her enhanced senses to track prey from miles away. Finn and Marcus, once they'd gotten over their embarrassment, became her constant companions, always ready with a joke or a story. Kyle was different. He was her teacher, her protector, the steady presence that grounded her when the power felt like too much. But there was something else too, something neither of them spoke about, the way his scent made her wolf purr contentedly, the way his hand lingered when he helped her practice shifting, the way he looked at her sometimes, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for centuries. It wasn't the mate bond. That had been destroyed, and Arya was grateful for it. She never wanted to feel that kind of compulsory attraction again, that loss of choice. But this was different. This was choosing to trust him, choosing to lean into his strength, choosing to wonder what it might be like to be loved by someone who saw her true self and wanted her anyway. One night, after a particularly grueling training session, Arya found Kale sitting alone on a cliff overlooking the valley. The moon was nearly full, painting everything in silver. She approached in wolf form, her paws silent on the stone. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning. She shifted, settling beside him in human form. "Too much in my head." "Want to talk about it?" Arya pulled her knees to her chest. "I keep thinking about them. My old pack, my parents. They're probably glad I'm dead. One less problem to worry about." "They're fools," Kale said flatly. "Your parents especially. Do you know what it costs to bind power like yours? The witch who performed that spell would have demanded a terrible price. Your parents paid it willingly. They loved you so much they crippled you to keep you safe." "Some love," Arya muttered. "Fear makes people do terrible things." Kyle's eyes were distant. "I knew the first matriarch, Arya. I served her for 300 years before she died. She was like you, compassionate, strong, unwilling to use her power to dominate. But there were wolves who feared her anyway, wolves who tried to kill her, to bind her, to steal her power for themselves. Your parents probably heard the old stories, probably thought they were protecting you from that fate." "They should have told me," Arya said, her voice breaking. "They should have given me a choice." "Yes, they should have." Kyle finally looked at her, and his expression was soft. "But they didn't. And now you're here with us, and you're becoming everything you were meant to be. That broken bond, that rejection, it set you free, Arya. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are the doorways to our destiny." Arya leaned her head on his shoulder, and Kale went still. Then, slowly, his arm came around her, holding her close. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if I can't do this? What if I'm not enough?" "You are enough," Kyle said fiercely. You're more than enough. You're a storm wrapped in skin, Arya Winters. You're the answer to 1,000 years of prayers. And when the time comes, and it will come, you'll face your past and show them exactly what they threw away. His scent wrapped around her, oak and snow and storm, and Arya felt her wolf settle contentedly. He's ours, her wolf murmured. Not by fate, by choice. When you're ready, little sister, he'll be ours. Arya didn't answer, but she didn't move away either. She stayed there in Kyle's arms under the silver moon and let herself imagine a future where she wasn't broken, where she was whole, where she was loved not despite her power, but because of everything she was. The attack came on a crisp autumn morning. Arya was practicing advanced shifting techniques with Theron and Marcus when Lyra's howl cut through the air. It was a warning. Intruders, many of them, approaching from the south. Silvercrest, Kyle said, materializing beside Arya in wolf form. His voice in her mind was grim. They've found us. Arya's heart clenched. Part of her had known this day would come, had known that Cain wouldn't just let her disappear, but she'd hoped for more time, more training. We're ready, her wolf said firmly. We've been ready for weeks. Let them come. The war party crested the ridge. At least 20 wolves, all in their beast forms, all radiating aggression. Leading them were two Arya recognized immediately. Alpha Cain, his dark fur bristling with dominance, his scent sharp with ozone and barely controlled fury. And beside him, sleek and deadly, was Seraphina, her wine-dark fur gleaming in the morning light. The Unchained formed a protective circle around Arya, all 10 of them, their massive forms dwarfing the Silvercrest wolves. But they didn't attack. They were waiting for her command. Cain shifted first. He stood naked and unashamed on the ridge, his body a testament to alpha strength, his eyes blazing with rage and something else, something that looked almost like regret. Arya Winters, he called out, his voice carrying. You've been living in our territory without permission. These lands belong to Silvercrest. You and your companions have one chance to submit to pack law. Bow to me, return to the pack, and I'll consider leniency. Arya shifted to human form. She was wearing the simple tunic and leggings the Unchained had given her, but she held herself like royalty. The power thrumming through her veins made her skin glow faintly silver. Your territory? She let a smile curve her lips. I don't think so, Cain. These are the free lands. No pack has claimed them for 1,000 years, and even if they were yours. Her wolf rose closer to the surface, and the air around her shimmered with power. You have no authority over me, not anymore. Cain's eyes widened. Even from this distance she could see him scenting the air, trying to understand what she'd become. Behind him, the Silvercrest wolves shifted uneasily. You rejected her, Kale said, shifting to stand beside Arya. His voice was cold as winter. You severed the bond. You cast her out to die. By pack law, you have no claim on her, not as mate, not as alpha, not as anything. Who are you? Cain demanded. Someone older than your bloodline, Kyle replied. Someone who's seen alphas rise and fall like wheat before a scythe. Walk away, pup. Take your wolves and go home. This doesn't have to end in blood. Seraphina laughed, that same bright, cruel sound Arya remembered from the Harvest Moon ceremony. She shifted, standing beside Cain with her hand possessively on his arm. She's an Omega, Seraphina said, her voice dripping with contempt. Look at her, playing at power with her new pack of rogues. Cain, let me handle this. I'll drag her back by her hair, and... She moved. It was a blur of speed, Seraphina's wolf erupting from her skin mid-leap, claws extended, aiming for Arya's throat. She was fast, skilled, a born warrior. She never had a chance. Arya shifted between one heartbeat and the next. Her massive white wolf form materialized, and she caught Seraphina mid-air with one huge paw. The impact sent the smaller wolf flying. Seraphina crashed into the rocky ground 20 feet away and didn't get back up, alive, but stunned and whimpering. The Silvercrest wolves recoiled. Several of them dropped into submissive postures, instinct overriding training. She's not an Omega, one of them whispered, the words carrying in the shocked silence. Moon goddess, she's not an Omega. Arya stalked forward. Each step sent ripples of power through the ground, her silver eyes fixed on Cain, and she let him feel the full weight of her presence, let him scent her true nature, lavender and morning dew and something new, something wild and ancient and utterly dominant. "You made a mistake," she said, her voice resonating both in her throat and in the minds of every wolf present. "You didn't just reject a mate. You didn't just cast out a pack member. You threw away the one thing that could have made you truly great." Behind her, the Unchained shifted as one. Their massive forms revealed themselves in all their terrifying glory. Not normal wolves, not even close. Dire wolves, ancient guardians, creatures of legend. Each one larger than any alpha alive, each one radiating power that made the Silvercrest wolves cringe. "My name is Arya Winters," Arya announced, her voice carrying across the ridge and beyond, sinking into the earth, the trees, the very air itself. "And I am the matriarch reborn. These lands, and every land where wolves run free, are under my protection. Your pack, Alpha Cain, is mine to judge." Cain's face had gone pale. He was staring at her like he was seeing a ghost. "The matriarch is a myth," he breathed. "Is she?" Arya's wolf smiled, all teeth. "Then tell me, Cain Blackwood, why can't you move? Why have your warriors dropped to their bellies? Why does your wolf howl inside you to submit, to bow, to beg forgiveness from the one you wronged?" It was true. Cain was frozen, his body locked in place by Arya's will. Around him, every Silvercrest wolf had dropped into submission, bellies to the ground, tails tucked, necks exposed. Even Seraphina, still dazed from Arya's strike, had instinctively rolled onto her back in surrender. Arya could feel it, the threads of power connecting her to every wolf present, could feel how easy it would be to pull those threads, to command them, to make them suffer as she'd suffered. But she didn't. "You rejected me because you thought I was weak," Arya said, padding closer to Cain. "Because you wanted power more than you wanted your mate. Because you were afraid of what the pack would think." "Arya," Cain whispered. "I didn't know. I couldn't have known. You didn't care to know." Arya's voice was hard. "But I'm not here for revenge, Cain. I'm here to teach you what it means to be an alpha." She released her hold on him, and he gasped, staggering. "Stand up," he obeyed, though his legs shook. "You wanted to be strong," Arya continued. "You wanted your pack to be feared, but strength without mercy is cruelty. Power without compassion is tyranny. A true alpha protects the weak, not crushes them. A true alpha serves their pack, not the other way around." She shifted back to human form, standing before him as the woman he'd rejected. But she was transformed, radiant with power, blazing with purpose, utterly unashamed. "I'm not taking your pack," she said. "Silvercrest is yours to lead. But things are going to change. You're going to treat your Omegas with respect. You're going to protect those who can't protect themselves. You're going to remember that every wolf, every single one, has value beyond their rank." Cain dropped to his knees. "Please," he said, and there were tears on his face now. "I'm sorry. Moon Goddess, I'm so sorry. I felt it the moment I severed the bond. I felt the mistake. But it was too late. I thought you died. You thought you could move on without consequences." Arya's expression was hard. "But actions have consequences, Cain, and yours is this. You'll live knowing you rejected your true mate. You'll rule beside Seraphina, and you'll wonder every day what might have been if you'd chosen differently." She looked past him to where Seraphina was slowly getting to her feet. The female wolf's amber eyes were wide with shock and fear. "As for you," Arya said, her voice dropping to ice, "you attacked your matriarch. By ancient law, that's treason. The penalty is death." Seraphina went white. "No, please, I didn't know. I didn't. But I am not my predecessor," Arya interrupted. "I don't believe in senseless violence. So, here's your punishment. You're stripped of your beta rank. You'll serve in the pack kitchens, where I once worked, for 1 year. You'll learn humility, learn what it means to be lesser. And if at the end of that year you've grown into a better wolf, I'll consider restoring your status." It was a punishment worse than death for someone like Seraphina, public humiliation, the loss of everything she'd worked for. But it was also merciful. It was a chance to change. Arya turned back to address the entire Silvercrest contingent. "Return to your pack. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them the matriarch has returned. Tell them that the old laws are being restored, laws of honor, of protection, of unity. Any pack that abides by these laws has nothing to fear from me, but those who prey on the weak, who abuse their power. Her eyes flashed silver. Those wolves will answer to me. She raised her voice, letting it carry on the wind, letting it sink into the earth and spread across the territories. I am Arya Winters, matriarch reborn. These mountains are my territory. This is my pack. And I declare that all wolves who seek sanctuary, who flee abuse or injustice, who need protection, they can come to me. I will shield them. I will guard them. And anyone who tries to harm them will face my wrath. The howl that followed came not from Arya, but from the Unchained. All 10 of them, heads thrown back, voices raised in a song that had been silent for 1,000 years. It was a song of triumph, of homecoming, of a new age dawning. And across the territories, in a dozen different packs, wolves stopped what they were doing and lifted their heads, feeling the call in their bones. The matriarch had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 months later, Arya stood on the same cliff where she'd once sat with Kyle and watched the moon rise. Her sanctuary, they were calling it Moonhaven now, had grown. Dozens of wolves had come seeking shelter, omegas fleeing, abusive packs. Rogues looking for redemption, young wolves who'd been cast out for being different. Arya welcomed them all. The Unchained had become her counsel. Lyra handled diplomacy. Theron trained the new arrivals in combat. Marcus and Finn kept order. And Kale. Kale remained at her side, her second, her protector, and something more. Thinking about him? Kyle asked, appearing beside her as he so often did. Arya didn't need to ask who he meant. Sometimes. Not as often as I used to, she glanced at him. He sends letters, you know, every week, apologizing, begging for a chance to explain. Do you want to see him? No, the answer came easily. That bond is gone. Whatever we might have been, it's done. He made his choice. I made mine. She turned fully to face Kale. And my choice is here. With you. With all of you. Kyle's eyes blazed. Arya. I know what you're going to say, she interrupted, that I'm too young, that I need time to heal, that you're old enough to be my great-great-grandfather. All true, Kyle said, but there was a smile tugging at his lips. And I don't care. Arya stepped closer. I'm not looking for a fated mate, Kyle. I had one of those and he threw me away. But a chosen mate, someone who sees me, all of me, and chooses to stay, that's worth more than any bond the moon goddess could forge. She could smell his desire, his longing, held in check by his honor. I've watched you for months, she continued. I've seen how you put everyone else first, how you carry centuries of loneliness like a burden you refuse to share, how you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. I'm your guard, Kale said roughly. I'm not supposed to— You're my choice, Arya said, and she placed her hand over his heart. Silver light bloomed between them, not a mate bond, but something deeper. A soul-deep recognition, a promise. If you'll have me, if you want this. Kyle's control shattered. He pulled her close, one hand cupping her face, his forehead resting against hers. I've wanted this since the moment I saw you broken in that barn, since I realized you were everything I'd been searching for across centuries. But Arya, are you sure? Once we do this, once we form a chosen bond, there's no going back. Good. Arya breathed. I don't want to go back. I want to go forward, with you. Kyle kissed her then, and it was nothing like the hesitant, awkward moments she'd imagined sharing with Cain. This was fire and ice, centuries of loneliness meeting a lifetime of longing, 2 souls recognizing each other across the span of time. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Kale smiled, truly smiled, for the first time since she'd known him. Then I'm yours, he said simply, for as long as you'll have me. Forever then, Arya grinned. Hope you're ready for that. I've been ready for 1,000 years. They stood together on that cliff, watching the full moon rise over their territory. Below, in the sanctuary, wolves were gathering for the evening meal. There was laughter, warmth, the sense of pack that went beyond blood or rank. But even in that moment of peace, Arya felt a flicker of unease. Her senses, sharper now, more attuned to the currents of power that flowed through the world, caught something on the wind, something dark, something old. "What is it?" Kyle asked, immediately alert. "I don't know," Arya admitted, "but something's coming, something wrong. Far to the east, beyond the territories, beyond the human lands, the sky flickered red, just for a moment, just long enough for those with ancient eyes to see. The blood moon was rising, and with it, a threat that had been sleeping since the first matriarch fell. But Arya wasn't alone anymore. She had her pack, she had her power, she had her chosen mate at her side, and she was ready. And so Arya Winters' journey from rejected Omega to matriarch reborn came full circle. She'd walked through fire and ice, through betrayal and revelation, through death and rebirth. She discovered that weakness is often strength in disguise, that the broken pieces of ourselves can be reassembled into something far more beautiful than what came before. That true power comes not from domination, but from lifting others up. The wolf they'd thrown away had returned as their queen. The mate they'd rejected had become something far greater than any Luna could ever be. And the Omega they'd dismissed, she was the matriarch, the first and the last, the alpha of alphas. But this is just the beginning of her story. The blood moon rises, ancient evils stir, and Arya will need every ounce of her newfound power to face what's coming. What did you think of Arya's transformation? Have you ever felt underestimated or dismissed only to prove everyone wrong? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you want to see what happens when the blood moon finally crests the horizon, make sure to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and ring the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter, because trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Thank you for listening to Arya's story. We'll see you in the next chapter when the real battle begins. Until then, remember, sometimes you have to be broken before you can become unbreakable.